everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. The battle to be PM is well and truly underway as Liz Truss vows to starve off slippery Starmer by immediately slashing Rishi Sunak's high-tax agenda and leading as a freedom-loving Conservative. So, why are the MSM, the establishment and Tory grandees, in the tank for the globalist Sunak, even though he's being spanked by Truss in the latest polls? I'll explore that in my digest next. Then my superstar panel give their view. Tonight, I'm joined by broadcaster and Loose Women star Carol McGiffin, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Nicol. Sunak boldly claims he's the heir to the Iron Lady's throne, but Truss wants to be given the chance to carve out her own identity.
It is quite frustrating that female politicians always get compared to Margaret Thatcher, whereas male politicians don't get compared to Ted Heath.
So, are the constant comparisons between Truss and Thatcher sexist? We'll debate that at 10:30. As his approval rating in typically working-class seats tanks, would choosing Fishy Rishi for PM cause the Tory red wall to crumble? Best-selling author and political pollster Matthew Goodwin has his finger firmly on the political pulse, and he's adamant that putting the Boris backstabber in number 10 would do serious damage to his predecessor's historic northern gains. His top analysis coming at 9:35. Speaking of Boris, should his name be on the ballot paper when Tory members choose the next PM? Well, thousands have now signed a petition sent to the Conservative co-chairman demanding just that. Its co-author, former MEP David Campbell-Bannerman, believes the people who gave the ousted PM his monumental mandate in 2019 should have a say on his future. He'll do battle with Pimlico Plumbers founder Charlie Mullins, who wants Bojo to go. That's the clash at 9:20. Is the world finally about to discover the truth about Meghan Markle? Acclaimed biographer Tom Bauer joins me to discuss his brand new and explosive book about Meghan and Prince Harry, named Revenge. Expect more bombshell revelations from the man who's pledged not to be silenced by the Sussexes at 10:15. As the BBC comes under fire for its patronising and denigrating documentary about the unvaccinated.
She's had a stroke, she's had 3 suspected heart attacks.
How can you be sure that that was the vaccine?
I'm so frustrated. This is just, I say, the most frustrating thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Well, in an exclusive tonight, I'm going to be sitting down with both of those women who say they've been misrepresented and manipulated by the show's bosses. They'll join me live in the studio for an unmissable interview at 9:45. With Disney, I can't believe I'm about to say this, Disney ditching fairy godmothers in favour of the gender-neutral term apprentices. Is wokeism tearing the magic out of the Magic Kingdom? Well, Panto legend Christopher Biggins is uncancelled to tackle the Mickey Mouse Company's latest depressing political correct pursuit at 10:40. As COVID zealots called for Brits to be muzzled again alongside loads of other serious limits to our liberty, is this proof that the health establishment will just never give up on the power and control they want over our lives? Plus, after Quidditch organisations decide to change the name of the sport to quad ball to distance themselves from creator and women's rights champion J.K. Rowling, why are Woketopians so intolerant? All that and more in the Media Buzz after 10. And as ever, you'll get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press, and I'll name the final greatest Britain and Union jackass of the week at 10:50. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. I knew that cringeworthy behind-the-scenes video from Rishi Sunak that I played you at this time last night really reminded me of someone. That someone being a certain David Brent. Look.
Guys, we totally smashed it. Well done. Right. If you think back 3-4 weeks ago, I was totally written out of this thing, right? I was totally written out. They thought this couldn't be done. They thought I'd have no place in it. But because all of you showed up, and you showed up on day one, we made this happen. And I am so grateful to you because you have worked your socks off for the last 2 weeks to get us to this position. And my God, have we got here in some style. This is beyond expectation. You should all feel enormously proud of what you've done. I'm enormously proud of you. And crucially, I'm really proud of the campaign that we've run, right? We have been honest, we have been positive about everyone, about what we're doing, and now we've got a job to do to take that message to the membership, right?
Sorry, just absolutely brilliant. I've got nothing more to add to that. You know exactly what that video is saying. My digest, by the way, on why Brits trust and distrust fishy Rishi Babs. It's not a surprise. Coming up in just a moment. Then my superstar panel weigh-in. Tonight, broadcaster and loose women's star Carol McGiffin, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and journalist Amy Nicol. But before all of that, the news headlines at 9 with Polly Millhurst.
Dan, thank you. The top story this hour. Liz Truss, as you've been hearing, has widened her lead over Rishi Sunak in the race to replace Boris Johnson at number 10. A new poll of Tory members by the YouGov group put the Foreign Secretary 24 points ahead of the former Chancellor, just a day after the pair made it through to the final runoff in the Conservative leadership contest. Speaking this afternoon in Peterborough, Ms Truss said she's confident she would win in any next general election.
I'm somebody in every government job I've done, I've got things done, whether it's at the Foreign Office with our tough sanctions regime on Russia, whether it's at trade with the trade deals with Japan and Australia. I'm somebody who pushes through, gets things sorted out and gets things done. That's why I want to be Prime Minister. This is a critical time for our country. We need bold action. We are in economic difficulty. The whole world is in economic difficulty. It's not time for business as usual.
Well, the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, says he'll be backing Liz Truss.
I think I think Rishi Sunak is a strong contender. I think Liz is a very good candidate. She's my favourite candidate. I think she has a fresh approach, which is what we need. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
The US President Joe Biden says he's doing great and keeping busy after testing positive for COVID-19. The White House says Mr. Biden will continue to work in isolation for the next 5 days until he tests negative. The president, who's 79 years old, says he's had mild symptoms and is grateful for support.
I'm doing well, getting a lot of work done, going to continue to get it done. And in the meantime, thanks for your concern and keep the faith. It's going to be okay.
Here, the Home Office's handling of the small boat crisis in the English Channel has been described as poor in a new watchdog report. The Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration has called for a more strategic response to migrant crossings, saying the system was overwhelmed. David Neal said data recorded on the migrants was awful and security checks were unreliable. The Home Office has responded by saying it's since transformed arrangements. Reports of crime in England and Wales have reached a 20-year high. Data from the ONS show 6.3 million offences were recorded in the year to March, with a sharp rise in fraud, rape and violent attacks. Knife crime, theft and domestic abuse also increased. The Home Office says the figures are likely to reflect improved crime recording. And lastly, the Queen's jewels are to be displayed at Buckingham Palace from tomorrow as part of an exhibition to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee. Along with tiaras, earrings and necklaces, visitors will also have the chance to take in images of the Queen's historic reign. The jewellery on display includes the coronet the then Prince Elizabeth wore to her parents' coronation in 1937. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News tonight, where it's time for Dan Wootton tonight.
Day one of the official campaign, and the establishment, the mainstream media, led by an endorsement in the Times newspaper, and the Tory grandees are doing all they can to convince us that Boris backstabbing globalist fishy Rishi Sunak just must be the next Prime Minister. Problem is, we're not listening to them anymore. In fact, a just-released YouGov poll of Conservative Party members shows Liz Truss extending her lead over Sunak by a margin of 62% to 38%, while just 4 in 10 Tory members say Rishi Sunak can be trusted to tell the truth. That's compared to fewer than 2 in 10 who say the same thing of Liz Truss. Of course, there must be no complacency from Team Truss. 6 weeks is a long time in politics. But I've said since the moment Sunak spearheaded the political assassination of Boris Johnson, he was finished amongst Tory loyalists. And the revelations that he had been plotting to knife the PM for 6 months, even registering his campaign website in December and failing to make speedy decisions in Cabinet, I mean, that's just made this mission impossible, in my view. So while Sunak focuses on electability, the Tory base prize loyalty and a commitment to the party's values. A small state, low tax philosophy is key to those principles. Being the Chancellor who increased the UK's tax burden to the highest it's been in 70 years is yet another disqualifying factor. Of course, the media, though, have been on a campaign to trip up Truss, the most experienced member of Cabinet, over her assertion she can reverse the national insurance hike, for example, without causing inflationary pressure. But she came out on top after this exchange with BBC Rottweiler Nick Robinson on the Today programme this morning, who was hoping for a gotcha moment, but was owned by the Foreign Secretary. Watch.
My tax cuts will decrease inflation.
Really?
Because what they
Can
do...
you point to a single Chancellor, a single Governor of the Bank of England, single leading economist who thinks that cutting taxes with borrowed money does anything other than increase inflation?
Patrick Minford, who's written an article about it this weekend.
There's one. There's one. But he is distinguished in many ways, but he is not what I just listed. He is not one of the leading economic thinkers in this country.
Nick, we have had a consensus of the Treasury, of economists, of the Financial Times, of other outlets peddling a particular type of economic policy for the last 20 years.
Let's just be honest about something. The media is in the tank for Sunak. So be certain there's going to be hit job after hit job on Truss over the next 6 weeks. And if she becomes Prime Minister, they will attempt to destroy her just like they succeeded with Boris. But as Patrick O'Flynn wrote in The Spectator today, the prospect of Liz Truss becoming the United Kingdom's 3rd female Prime Minister is antagonising all the right people. Almost the entire Remainer establishment, including state-sponsored leftist comedians, professors of European studies, A.C. Grayling, senior figures at the Times newspaper, Irish government insiders, is recoiling at the thought. It is only partly as a result of this that I find myself thawing towards her, if not quite warming, and hoping that she defeats Rishi Sunak when the votes of the wider Conservative membership are counted in early September. Do you know, it always amazes me just how out of touch the MSM are with voters. ITV's Paul Brand tweeted his astonishment at a focus group of Tory members in Bury North who were outraged by the way Boris was deposed. He tweeted, "Interesting to hear Liz Truss this morning sounding as loyal as possible to Boris Johnson. Yesterday, we met members in the Red Wall seat of Bury North for whom loyalty was very important. Only a small sample, but was struck by the clarity of opinion. Firstly, they were all adamant they don't want Sunak. They perceive him, as one put it, as a backstabber. They also think Liz Truss was planning her bid for leader for some time, but gave her credit for waiting until Boris Johnson had resigned because she's, quote, a genuine person. No sugar, Sherlock. The media and establishment might love Sunak for the way he ousted Boris, but ordinary folk now view him as a disloyal snake, slick with his sound bites, but not to be trusted. To respond now, my superstar panel, broadcaster and loose women's star Carol McGiffin, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Nicole. So, Sean, you are the Tory on the panel today. Have you declared for Liz officially?
I've declared for Liz officially, but more importantly, I've had so many people contact me and explain why they're declaring for Liz. And it seems to be going down two lines. You have one set of Tory members who are like, quite frankly, they think Rishi has behaved like a snake. And I'll give you chapter and verse on why they're very disappointed that Boris has been removed and they hold Rishi responsible for that. And you have another set of Tories who just think he is too liberal. They think he's too much of a globalist. They think he doesn't understand where working people are coming from, and they want someone like Liz, who they think is loyal to the country. And when you talk about the northern seats, the red wall seats, they tend to be people who are proud of the country. They think this is a great nation, and they want to see someone lead it who feels the same as well, and they don't feel the same about Rishi.
However, I do think at this point, a lot of people just see it like choosing between Beavis or Butthead. Like,
well, not within the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Maybe within the wider
population. This is the whole
population.
problem, isn't it? Because you talked about the electorate, and this is what the Conservative membership have completely overlooked. The Conservative MPs haven't thought about the wider picture. And by putting these two as front runners, you've just lost the next general election.
Carol McGiffin, you weren't taken really by any of the candidates.
Not really, no.
But you think Truss is the least worst option, is it fair to say?
Again, we are faced with having to choose the least worst. And I know what a fan of Boris you were, and I know that... but I'm beginning to see where you're coming from. I'm beginning to see that, you know, maybe we would have been better off if he hadn't have been backstabbed and deposed and thrown out.
Because what have we gained?
Well, you know, nothing. We have got these two people that... You know, I can't get excited about either of them, really,
Were you excited about any of the five previously? Were you excited about Penny Mordaunt?
No.
None of them?
I was excited about
Kemi Badenoch.
Kemi, I was, yeah.
Kemi Badenoch.
About the only proper, in my eyes, Conservative out of all...
Yeah. But the problem is, because of the system, she was never going to get on the ballot. I mean, I was very excited about Kemi Badenoch as well, but I knew she wasn't going to be in the final two.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is with Rishi, that video you showed last night, anyone who hasn't seen that, and I'm definitely going to retweet it later, they need to see it because it really shows him for what he is. And I think, I was saying to Sean earlier, I think if you close your eyes and you just listen to him, he's just beginning to sound so much like Tony Blair. It's frightening.
I mean, they could be the same person.
They could be.
He's New Labour.
And he really is a massive, massive globalist. And it's almost like this is his place. This is where he's got to go. And he knew this was going to happen. Yeah. And he will do what Boris did not have the balls to do, I think. And that's probably why they got rid of him.
Totally. And, Sean, that's why I don't give a damn, to be honest, what the establishment, what the MSM are telling me about why we've just got to pick Sunak. I don't give a damn.
This is Rishi's Achilles heel, the fact that he's so popular with the establishment. This is the same establishment that set itself against Brexit, and it's the same public that voted for Brexit, particularly...
And locked us down, by the way.
And what you'll find is Tory members, even Remainers, even Tory Remainers accepted the vote. What I'm trying to get at here is you have a very big group of Brexiteers who understand politics a bit more than the average person because they're a party member, and they're seeing someone being peddled by effectively the enemy. So the more Rishi's peddled by the MSN, the less he'll be accepted by members.
And also, I think, if you ever want to talk dirty to a Tory and get one all hot under the collar, all you need to do is mention tax cuts. They're like, yeah, I'll go for that. And he's not. He's letting them down. So by saying, no, we must eliminate this fairy tale of tax cuts, he's actually not... appealing himself to anyone.
I've got to say, Amy, that's the most correct you've ever been. You're spot on. You're spot on about that. And the point is this. We have people in this country who are struggling to make ends meet. giving them back their own money, of course that's going to be popular.
Yeah, but you can't know. I mean, it just isn't going to make the slightest bit of difference at this point, is it? I think Liz is onto something if she does abolish the green levies, because I think the green thing is really causing people so many problems.
But again, that's why Kemi Badenoch excited so many of us, because she was the only one brave enough during the campaign to say, no, I actually might delay net zero, and I would like to see more of that from Liz.
Yeah,
you know?
Yes, exactly. That's right. And I think that would really appeal to people, although most people don't have a say in this stupid leadership.
Carol, what about the presentation thing, Carol? Because there's a lot of talk around that, and even as a big supporter and fan of Liz Truss, I can admit she's not polished on that front, shall we say? Does it matter?
Well, I think it's a real shame that it's so important, and if we didn't have so much TV and media, if people weren't so obsessed with the way people are presenting themselves, then, you know, if you didn't know that's what she sounded like and that's what she spoke like, then you'd probably think, if you just read her ideas on paper, you would think, but it is great.
It is important. It is important.
I know.
She has to represent us on the world stage. Can you imagine her going to the G7 summit?
Well, she's done a great job of that.
No, she hasn't. Imagine her.
She's done an incredible job
One
of
thing
that.
that Boris did very well was his interactions with Ukraine. What he did with Zelensky. Can you imagine Liz Truss going into a war zone?
This is what I love, though. All of a sudden, now Boris is gone. All of the lefties... They're praising him. They're all saying he's the biggest threat.
Hold on.
The truth comes out.
Hold on.
Sonny, you've never praised Boris once until tonight.
He absolutely wheeled it out at his convenience at the wrong time, because he knew he was good at it.
He wheeled it out because that's a skill. But let's be clear. You remember, this is amongst Tory members who are focused, more interested in politics than the average person. They join the Tory party. They'll be well aware of somebody who's overly slick presentation. What we are looking for is substance.
But fundamentally, Sean, I don't believe that Sunak can turn those numbers around. I know there's going to be hit job after hit job on Truss over the next 6 weeks. Dominic Cummings is going to be doing all of his dark arts behind the scenes. But fundamentally, that deficit, it's massive, 24 points between them. And look at the distrust in Sunak. 6 out of 10 Tory voters don't trust him. I'm sorry, I don't think he can turn it around.
As someone, we can't trust
as someone who ran a campaign to appeal to Tory members, what you very quickly understand is they're much more interested in substance than slickness. They value loyalty, and they can sniff a rat out from very far away.
Exactly. And by the way,
they didn't do that with Boris.
Sunak should have resigned in December in an honourable way, like Lord Frost did. You know, if he was that concerned about the health establishment, because, you know, today he's trying to claim that he was the man who stopped the lockdowns. Well, I'm sorry, Lord Frost resigned. And the point is, if he had resigned in December and then started his campaign, then fine. But he didn't. He stayed in Cabinet and he tried to be a debilitating force for Boris in Cabinet. And to me, it's actually not about the personal politics between the two of them. It's the fact that he was destabilising the country in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Though, by the way, and Carol, you'll like this, I don't like calling it the cost of living crisis anymore. It's the cost of lockdown crisis. And that's where I want to start referring to it as. But Carol McGiffin, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole, my superstar panel are here all evening. We've got a big show ahead, so coming up, best-selling author and top pollster Matthew Goodwin explains why installing Fishy Rishi inside Number 10 could bring down the Tory red wall. But up next in The Clash, should Boris's name be on the ballot paper when Tory members choose his successor, former MEP David Campbell-Bannerman, who co-authored a petition signed by thousands demanding just that, will do battle with Pimlico Plumbers founder Charlie Mullins. I want to know what you think about this. So what it would basically mean is that when the Tories go to vote, I think it's in a couple of weeks' time, or less than 2 weeks now, you'd have Truss there, you'd have Sunak there, and you would have Boris Johnson on the ballot as well. So while it would offend a lot of people, it means Boris could stay in Number 10. It is possible under the Tory party constitution. Should it happen, email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle @gbnews. Our poll running there too. The results next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tom Bower on the real Meghan Markle still to come. But first, time for the clash. And after weeks of backstabbing, blue-on-blue attacks and carefully crafted campaign launches, we're finally down to the final two Tory leadership candidates in fishy Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. But one name that Tory members are increasingly frustrated is not on the ballot is the Brexit delivering election-winning Boris Johnson. As was revealed yesterday by the Daily Telegraph's Christopher Hope on my Superstar panel, at least 4,000 Tory members have signed a petition organised by Lord Cruddas and David Campbell-Bannerman demanding that members are given their own confirmatory vote on Mr Johnson's future. And as Chris explained last night on the show, the decision not to add the PM to the ballot looks more and more like a mistake. Watch.
John Major had no confidence about it himself and fought stood again. When William Hague came in, they changed the rules. Article 17 means you can't stand if you're an outgoing leader. So you change that. Now, the way that might happen is there's letters going from the association chairman to the National Convention, which is this democratic body which decides the policy in the Tory party. They vote on overhauling Article 17. And that we're told, well, that can never happen. It would be outrageous. But I think what's happened to Boris Johnson is outrageous.
Well,
and then we need to change the rules.
So, with the calls growing louder by the day, should Boris Johnson be put on the Tory ballot alongside Truss and Sunak? You can vote in our Twitter poll now. I want to get your thoughts on this too. Email me, Dan at gbnews.uk, at gbnews on Twitter. The results shortly, but duking it out now. I'm joined by one of the petition's organisers himself, the former Conservative MEP, David Campbell-Bannerman, and businessman and Pimlico Plumbers founder, Charlie Mullins. So, David, tell me about this plan by you and Lord Cruddas, who is obviously a major Tory donor, to get Boris on the ballot. Explain how you think it could work.
Yes, thanks, Dan. What it is, actually, it's not the same ballot as the other two. It's a separate ballot. It's a Boris ballot, as we're calling it. And it's a straight yes or no, a bit like a referendum. You know, do you keep Boris as leader of the party or do you dismiss him? And it will be down to the membership. And we think that's far more democratic. And as you rightly said, you know, the board of the party under Article 17 of the Constitution, they have every right to do this, whatever's in the best interest of the party.
And then if the membership voted to keep him, and David, I'm almost certain they would that make the current leadership contest null and void?
Yes, I mean, basically, if it was a yes vote, you keep Boris as leader. I'm sure he would then take on boards who've stood, of those that stood. But if it's a no, then I think the party will rally better together and unify behind a new leader than they would otherwise, because there's thousands of members contacting us. We have 6,000 now who signed. These are members who signed the petition. Conservative Post, that is, conservativepost.co.uk, if you want to have a look at it. And it's growing enormous numbers, and there's real anger out there. And a lot of people say they will just vote for this and then they'll leave the party, and we don't want that. And it's a meltdown as well. We've seen that, a loss of 10%, since Boris went.
Of course, it's disastrous in the polls. Charlie Mullins, you say this is a terrible idea. Why?
Yeah, well, Boris knows the rules, and he's left in disgrace. And I think that obviously everybody loves a comeback, but there's no way he can come back this quick. I mean, the rules are the rules, and he hasn't played the game. And I don't think this can happen anyway. I think it's just a media stunt, if I'm being honest. And it's like a chairman sacking the football manager, and all of a sudden the fans want him back. It just can't happen.
Well, David, do you want to respond to that? Because clearly you're not doing this as a stunt, are you? You think it can actually happen. It could happen within the party rules.
Yeah, well, of course, Charlie's a Lib Dem now, aren't you, Charlie? I mean, you've got Democrat in your name. You should believe in giving the members a vote. Well, that's all we're doing. It's not a stunt. It's deadly serious. The party can do this. The board can do it. Why can it do it? Because what's the alternative? We could lose. We've lost 10% already in the polls. We're into the 20s now. We used to be just 2 or 4% behind Labour under Boris, despite Partygate in the polls. And thousands of members could leave, and that would be a disaster for us. So, that's the alternative. Let's put it to a vote, do it democratically. If it's a no, we move on, we unite behind the new leader. And I'm backing Liz Truss on that basis, think she's got a lot to offer. But let's put Boris on a separate ballot, that Boris ballot.
Charlie, can you understand why members are so angry, Charlie? Because they haven't been given an opportunity to say whether they agree or not with the MP's decisions to depose Boris.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that side of it, but you've got to remember his own sort of party are not happy with him. They've very much gone against him. And,
well, the MPs arenn't.
The MPs, so they're the guys he's got to work with. And let's be fair. Whether all the 200,000 members voted him in, it doesn't change anything. He knows the rules. He's leaving with disgrace. How can he possibly come back? What's going to change if he comes back? It means that we're just accepting, all what's gone on. And
David, how do you answer that?
Well, again, let the members decide. Let them be the court, not the media, not MPs, a few MPs. It's not, by the way, at least half of Conservative MPs still back Boris to some extent. That there is an element that don't. But there's a lot of jobs workers out there, I'm afraid, that just want jobs under new leaders, and it's a career move, and that's a disgrace. But really, let the members decide. If Charlie's right, if they think that Boris is a disgrace, then they can get rid of him, and we can all move on, and we won't have this animosity and the potential of actually splitting. People going after rival parties. We don't want that. Boris has united us.
Well, yes, and David also. And David, also financially, this is very important for the party, isn't it? And if you look at someone like Lord Grudders, I mean, he has been a serious donor in the past. So can the Tory party afford to lose people like him? And actually, we had John Caldwell on the show earlier this week. He's the Billionaire Phones for You founder, and he was one of the biggest donors, I think the biggest donor actually, to the Tory party before the 2019 election. And he said he simply wouldn't sign a cheque for any of these candidates.
No, look, I heard today that it's not just Lord Grudders who's been incredibly generous and loyal to the party. It's people who've given 20 million to the party is what we're talking about here.
Wow.
And they're very upset and very angry. So it is really significant.
OK, final word to you, Charlie Mullins.
Well, if Boris gets back in, Conservatives won't be getting 2 bob off of me. I mean, that's the end for me anyhow. So it's all very well the big money people saying they're going to put in, but we need honesty now, and we need a new leader. And let's be fair, let's give the other 2 a chance.
So,
Yeah, I
Charlie,
mean,
you would
becoming like a
potentially
circus.
donate if Sunak or Truss were to win? You would potentially donate to the Tories under their
Not if
leadership?
Sunak wins, no, because no, I don't think he's right. I don't think he stacks up. But obviously, I would put a few quid in if Liz gets in, because I think you know she reminds me a little bit of Thatcher, and I know she's not Thatcher, but if there's 10% of Thatcher in her, then Conservatives are going to do great again. So I'm fully behind them, but they won't get no money off me if Boris or
Okay, well, look, at least there's one thing. We're not in agreement on Boris, but all three of us are in agreement that Rishi Sunak is not the best choice as Prime Minister. So let's end on that note. Thank you so much.
Truss, it's nice to have you back. But it's more. I mean, the Brexit thing does matter, and the party, the Conservative Party, I don't agree with that. I respect that, but it's 70% pro-Brexit, and that's a big factor. We've still got to finish Brexit and finish it off with the protocol, etc.
No, indeed.
And then we can all
Indeed.
move on and make of it.
Well, look, thank you so much. And David, we'll keep in touch about this, of course, because it's going to be really interesting to see where you get to. Former Conservative MEP David Campbell-Bannerman and Pimlico Plumbers founder Charlie Mullen. So who do you agree with on this? Should Boris Johnson's name be on the Tory ballot too? Sean says on Twitter he should be on the ballot. After all, he sorted Brexit and the vaccine rollout. From Barry, liar Johnson has been booted out. Get over it and move on. And from Joey, yes, get him on the ballot. He is better than the two we have been left to vote for. Really interesting, these results. 71% of you agree that Boris should be on the ballot for next Tory leader. Just 29% of you saying he shouldn't. So a lot of Boris backing. A lot of Boris backing remains. Now, coming up, as the BBC comes under fire for its patronising documentary denigrating the unvaccinated, we're sitting down with two of the show's participants, Nazarene Veronica and Vicky Borman, who say they've been misrepresented by the show's bosses. But up next, best-selling author and political bolster Matthew Goodwin is here to explain why Rishi Sunak would be a disaster for Conservatives in the Red Wall. Back in 2.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Time now for star political analyst and pollster Matthew Goodwin on the battle to be PM. Now, deep-pocketed, fishy Rishi Sunak would be the wealthiest Prime Minister this country's ever had if he reaches number 10. Given that and his wife's controversial non-dom status, would he be an electoral disaster in the Red Wall? Well, Matthew, I signed up to your new Substack this week, and you've got some strong views on how Rishi would do in the Red Wall, don't you?
Well, I don't think he'd go down very well, to be honest. I think the wealth factor is a factor in this race. It's not just about being wealthy. I'm not anti-wealth myself. But I think with Rishi, he's so wealthy, twice as wealthy as the Queen. As we go into this big cost of living crisis, we're in it now, as it gets worse over the winter, I think that's going to become a factor. I think questions about blind trusts, tax avoidance, all of those kinds of questions are going to follow a Prime Minister Sunak in a big way. I think he's actually quite a big risk for the party.
So even though those issues might not be at the top of the agenda for Conservative Party members, you're talking about what would happen if it was Sunak versus Starmer at a general election.
Yeah, I'm talking about, how would Rishi Sunak go down in the country more generally? And
because
I think
he's saying, by the way, he is more electable than Truss. He's been on the record today saying Truss can't be elected Prime Minister, I can.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting view. Unlike Truss, we actually have a lot of polling on Rishi Sunak. And if you look at the latest polling that we have on how he was performing as Chancellor, how he was seen in the country, the blunt reality is his ratings collapse over the last year, so that he's now in minus territory. He's got a net negative. He's not seen as a popular politician. He wasn't seen as doing a good job
So is he telling the
in the Treasury. I think what they're trying to project, based on a few opinion polls from a long time ago, is this idea that, Sunak is credible, he can win an election and so on. Actually, I don't think that's where Conservative members are. And the polling today, I think, actually seems to show it. A lot of polling I've been doing, Dan, shows the same thing. I think actually Conservative members are going to want somebody that is absolutely committed to Brexit, is not associated with expanding the state and raising taxes when they're in power, and somebody that they can trust overall. And probably, you know what they're thinking? Liz Truss isn't the perfect candidate. She's not got anywhere near as much charisma as Boris Johnson, but they're probably asking themselves, can I actually trust this candidate to deliver conservatism, right? Are they a conservative? And I think ultimately that's probably going to swing it for Liz.
She is, he's not. Can we talk a little bit more about that poll? Because, look, obviously it showed Sunak lagging spectacularly behind Truss. But the thing that interested me was the trustworthiness question, because 6 out of 10 Tory members don't think you can trust him. And I've been sensing this everywhere, on social media, in my email inbox, when I speak to people on the street about this race. This idea, and I obviously feel it too, but I'm not just saying it because I feel it, it's a sense that I pick up, that Conservative Party members are very angry with the way he stayed in Cabinet, even though he had turned on Boris, and we know he was planning his campaign, and we know he'd registered his campaign website, for example, back in December. That sort of deception people are really angry about and can't just get over.
I think that's a real thing. I don't think that's just in your world. I heard much the same from MPs on the terrace earlier this week. There is a sense of betrayal. But also beyond that, actually, I think there's a sense that Rishi Sunak is the wrong politician for the current time. I think I've heard people describe him as George Osborne 2.0. Yeah, he's too metropolitan.
What about David Cameron 2.0, as Carol McGiffin said earlier?
He's too metropolitan, he's too slick, he's too put together, he's a smooth operator. That's one of the criticisms of Sunak, right? Now, I think that's definitely there. But also, there's policy, Dan. There's a lot of people that I come across who say, this isn't actually a blank slate candidate. This is somebody who's been in office, and these are the things he's done in office. And actually, that's not the kind of conservatism that I associate with the party after Brexit.
Well, and also look around. Look at the economy. It's not working, is it? And he, obviously, there were lots of external factors. Of course there were, but he was the Chancellor that took us to this position and took us to the highest tax burden in 70 years.
I mean, I've heard that all week. I think it's a factor. You can see it in the polls. And I think there are a lot of people, particularly people behind the Kemi campaign, for example, who feel that actually what the party probably needs now is somebody that is going to be true to Conservative principles, is going to really turn the guns on Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. And actually, you know, my view of Liz Truss is she's not the perfect candidate. But there was a moment in the debates where you saw her turn to Rishi Sunak and really just let loose. And I heard...
When he thought, by the way, that he had got a gotcha moment.
Yeah, and I think one MP said this to me earlier this week, and I think it was right. He said there was a glimpse there of actually what she might be like if she turned her guns on Starmer. And that's what they're clinging to. I'm not saying she's the answer, but that's what they're clinging to.
Yeah, I think there were glimpses in that ITV debate. There were certainly glimpses. She's not the finished article yet, but Thatcher wasn't the finished article either in 77. But I guess the point is she had time, didn't she? She had time as opposition leader.
Well, people forget this.
Thatcher has no time.
Thatcher between 79 and 82 was getting smashed left, right and sideways. Everybody conveniently forgets this. The ratings were appalling. The by-elections were a complete disaster. And then what happened? 83 and 87, right? The rest is history. So I think let's just remember the lessons of the past, and let's just remember that things can change very rapidly.
They can, but it's literally 2 weeks until the ballots are sent out. So if you were advising Sunak, he's going to have to turn things around very quickly, right? Because obviously this campaign goes on for 6 weeks, but the worry is a lot of Tory members are very efficient people and they vote early and they send their ballot off at the start of the process and it's over for them. Sure, they can change their vote, but who's really going to do that? So what can he do quickly to turn it around?
So his strategy is going to be project credibility based on his time in office, project experience, claim he's the only person that can beat Labour, and hope, perhaps plan, that a scandal involving Liz Truss will erupt. That's the strategy for the next few weeks.
Is a scandal the only thing that could derail her? Because I've heard lots of rumours that Dominic Cummings, for example, is planning to unleash lots of nasty attacks on Liz, whether it's via sources or directly himself. I mean, do people care? Do people care about her personal life, for example?
I think there was
or is that just done now in 2022?
You know what? I really don't think that is as big a factor as people assume. I think one of the other things, Dan, an MP said this to me this week, very interestingly. He said, what people don't understand about Dominic Cummings is the more he gets behind a candidate, the more he alienates the Conservative Party and mobilises the Conservative Party to vote for the other candidate. I don't know if he's realised that he is a poison chalice in British politics. So the more that Conservative members say, well, Cummings is saying this, they will do the opposite, right? They view him as much as being a sort of bringing down Boris Johnson and the party in many respects as they do Rishi Sunak. And I think this is going to be one of those things that we'll see play out over the next few weeks.
Matthew Goodwin, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Please do keep us posted over the next 6 weeks. But coming up, as COVID zealots call for Brits to be muzzled again alongside other serious limits to our liberty, is this proof the health establishment will never give up on the power and control they have over our lives? My superstar panel return to debate that at 10:30. But first, my exclusive interview with two women who say they were misrepresented and manipulated by the BBC in its patronising unvaccinated documentary. Nazarene, Veronica and Vicky Borman join me in the studio in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up, but now it's The Outsider. The BBC has been hitting the headlines for all the wrong reasons in recent weeks, but it's under fresh fire today after the broadcast of its new documentary on Brits who have chosen not to have the COVID jab. Unvaccinated saw 7 folk put in a house for 5 days, while a flurry of so-called experts tried to diffuse their concerns about taking the injection. Presented by Professor Hannah Fry, a data-crunching mathematician who takes credit for bringing us out of the first lockdown in 2020. The show ultimately tried to get the group to change their minds and get vaccinated. But participants of the programme, which aired on BBC Two last night, have now hit out at the, quote, bias beep for crafty editing and cutting key scenes from their contributions. Here's a clip of tonight's guests, Nazarene, Veronica and Vicky Borman in action on the show.
Friend Katrina, she is 28 years old. She was perfectly healthy before. She only had 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine. 5 days later, she was beginning to experience brain fog. Now she's had a stroke. She's had 3 suspected heart attacks. So this is a video of her having a seizure.
How can you be sure that that was the vaccine and not something that would have happened anyway? This time, the nasty jelly bean represents the risk of getting myocarditis.
This is not how we should be doing this. It makes me quite angry and quite frustrated when I'm, gunning for thousands of people who have either died or been injured, that I'm going to sit here and entertain jelly beans. I'm so frustrated. This is just, I say, the most frustrating thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Many viewers have since blasted the BBC for broadcasting, quote, unbalanced propaganda. And the Daily Telegraph also let rip, calling the programme a painfully patronising documentary that was akin to Big Brother sponsored by Pfizer, before giving it a paltry 1 star out of 5. And I'm delighted now to be joined by the 2 leading stars of the programme, Nazarene and Vicky, who've accused the BBC of woefully misrepresenting them. So, Vicky, talk to me about how the BBC misrepresented you and why you feel let down by the programme.
I don't know if I'd use the definite term misrepresented, but I'm terribly frustrated this morning, as I was last night. I feel let down because I went in there to tell everybody why I wasn't vaccinated, and I don't think anybody that I've spoke to this morning knows the answer to that question.
And what is the answer to that question?
Well, I think you would have had to have spent a week with me. There are a lot of different reasons, which is what we tried to speak to Hannah about, talking about everything from statistics to things we're seeing in the papers. The list was endless, and at no point do I feel like those questions were actually addressed.
And Nazarene, when it came to your personal story, they obviously included the moment where you spoke about your friend who had suffered adverse side effects. But I believe you have also lost a relative to vaccine damage, and you say the BBC left that out of the programme?
Yeah, there are many times where I mentioned that my great-grandma was killed by this vaccine and my other grandma had a stroke after hers. So that's not just one person that I've seen have an adverse reaction, that's 3 people in my circle who I've seen have an adverse reaction. So obviously I'm going to be a bit sceptical if I'm watching this happen in front of me. But I feel that it was left out, and I'm really upset that they didn't include that, because it's really important and it shows that I'm not just, crazy, and I'm not just seeing one person and having this strong opinion because of it. It's multiple people in my close circle, so yeah.
Naz isn't the only person in the house that also has friends or close family members who have either died or had different adverse reactions or side effects. Everybody had a story to tell on a personal level, myself included. But yeah, they were not represented.
And Vicky, I have to be honest. My impression, having sat through the documentary, is that they wanted to portray the participants as mad conspiracy theorists.
I understand totally from watching the documentary last night why you feel like that. I think...
And you're not, are you?
Absolutely not, no. I'm an adult who can make an informed, coerced decision about my body. There was definitely a narrative there, and I think, you know, they picked people who had a background story which was maybe not necessary, if that makes sense to you. They could have put other very credible people in there from the health profession, doctors and such like, but they chose not to. And I think that always makes me sceptical, is why were 7 members of the public, I guess, up against the professionals? It wasn't evenly balanced in that respect.
So already it started off from it wasn't an equal playing ground. It started off immediately, you know, it was unfair. Everyone could see that.
And can we talk about one of the professors who featured in the documentary, because this is a scientist called Professor Adam Finn, who's at Bristol University. But what wasn't actually revealed at all in the documentary is here's the director of Pfizer's Vaccine Centre of Excellence, which the company invested £4.6 million in. So it feels like, at the very least, the BBC should have revealed that information.
I agree. I would have liked to have known that.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have had it revealed to me exactly what I was going in there to do.
I mean,
I went in there to explain to everyone why we were not vaccinated, and that's not what happened.
They didn't tell us that the whole point of the show would be to change our minds.
Or experiment on us.
And yeah, I mean, with the professor, I mean, talk about conflict of interest, right? Like, how can you have someone and say that they're an independent researcher when they
have received funding from Pfizer?
Exactly.
And the other thing that really shocked me was just the complete lack of anyone actually saying, hang on a moment, why would Vicky and Nazarene need to get the COVID vaccine? You are young, you've quite possibly had COVID before, which would give you a natural immunity. There was no... I mean, I literally don't think the phrase natural immunity was mentioned once.
We would have said it 100 times.
I think there was a time where I think one of the scientists who was working in making the vaccines, he said that vaccine antibodies are higher than natural immunity antibodies, which is completely false. I mean, if you look at, there are many studies which prove that that is not correct. So that was shocking to watch back.
A lot of the time we did have the professionals actually on our side. They were saying things that were not going to portray the vaccine in a positive light, so that those comments have just been left out.
And there were many times where they couldn't answer our questions as well, which we secretly knew the answers to already. So the fact that these experts, the top experts, could not answer our questions, it kind of says it all.
Do either of you regret taking part in the documentary?
No. Definitely not.
I mean, it's just an opportunity to spread the truth, which I feel is lacking in the media at the moment. Yeah. Like, it just seems that they're very one-sided and focused on one particular narrative, and anything from the other side is being heavily censored, or, you know, people are having their accounts taken down. So, yeah, I don't regret it at all. No, I'm glad I went on.
I'm glad I went on, and if anything, it's made me question even more everything, including the vaccine. Why couldn't we just have an open adult conversation, an actual, what I would class as a documentary on why I'm not vaccinated? What was everybody so worried about?
Do you think these sorts of documentaries and the way that they're portrayed spreads division in society, because that's my real concern. The BBC, who claim that they want to be diverse, they actually want to treat the unvaccinated as if they're some sort of freak show.
Well, that's something that we said a lot, is that actually, you know, we can sit down and be adults and speak to you in a nice way. To have jelly beans representing people who have died, and I said there and then, thanks to editing, you won't see that, but it isn't just about the people that died from a vaccine or the people that have died from the adverse reactions. It's people that died of COVID as well. We're representing those people's lives with a jelly bean. It's patronising. So if you're going to treat us like children, in many times you'll see that we got frustrated and walked out because I'm not there to be treated like a child. Sit down and treat me and act like an adult, and, you know, we could have had a really good documentary. There was substance in there that I think I'm gutted that wasn't shown.
Yeah.
Well, Vicky Boardman and Nazra and Veronica, thank you so much for agreeing to speak out about your experience tonight. Of course, we do get both sides of the story, as you know, on GB News. So we have approached the BBC today, and this is how they responded. This one-hour documentary accurately represents the views expressed during filming and adheres to the BBC's strict editorial guidelines, especially with regards to accuracy and fairness. And a Department of Health and Social Care spokesman said all vaccines have undergone robust clinical trials and meet the UK medical regulators' strict standards of safety, effectiveness and quality. On the professor featured in the programme, who works at Pfizer's vaccine centre, mentioned by our guest tonight, a BBC spokesman said Professor Finn is an employee of the University of Bristol and in that capacity leads a research group within the Pfizer Vaccine Centre of Excellence. He is not a director in a corporate sense and receives no payment or benefit directly from Pfizer. His work in relation to COVID-19 vaccines is independent of Pfizer's control or direction and will be subject to peer review in the usual way. He did not lead or conduct any trials of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Truss and Sunak may have won the battle, but the war to become Prime Minister is only just getting started, and Liz isn't too happy with a certain comparison getting bandied around.
It's quite frustrating that female politicians always get compared to Margaret Thatcher, whereas male politicians don't get compared to Ted Heath.
I'll ask my superstar panel whether it's sexist to liken Truss to Thatcher at 10:30. I would have thought it was a compliment, to be honest. Tonight, I'm joined by my very own Iron Lady, the broadcaster and Loose Women's star Carol McGiffin. You don't want to mess with her. Former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and the author and journalist Amy Nicol. And from Maggie to the Duke and Duchess of Woke. Acclaimed biographer Tom Bower has written his explosive new book, Revenge, lifting the lid on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's increasingly appalling behaviour. Expect bombshell revelations from the man who refused to be silenced by the Sussexes at 10:15. Also coming up, there's something goofy going on at Disney World as they replace fairy godmothers with gender-neutral terms like apprentices. Well, I managed to get in one final wish because Panto legend Christopher Biggins joins me to discuss this woke madness. He's uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, as health bosses hysterically claim that the NHS is dying due to lack of COVID measures, will the health establishment ever stop trying to control our lives? And the witch hunt against J.K. Rowling continues, with the lefty mod even trying to cancel Quidditch. We'll be flying through those stories in our Media Buzz this hour. You'll also get a first look at tomorrow's newspapers as they drop. And as ever, I'll crown a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass before the night is out. But first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story. Liz Truss has widened her lead over Rishi Sunak in the race to replace Boris Johnson at number 10 Downing Street. A new poll of Tory members by YouGov put the Foreign Secretary 24 points ahead of the former Chancellor, just a day after the pair made it through to the final runoff in the Conservative leadership contest. Speaking this afternoon in Peterborough, Ms Truss said she's confident she would win in the next general election.
I'm somebody in every government job I've done, I've got things done, whether it's at the Foreign Office with our tough sanctions regime on Russia, whether it's at trade with the trade deals with Japan and Australia. I'm somebody who pushes through, gets things sorted out and gets things done. That's why I want to be Prime Minister. This is a critical time for our country. We need bold action. We are in economic difficulty. The whole world is in economic difficulty. It's not time for business as usual.
Well, the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, said he'll be backing Liz Truss.
I think I think Rishi Sunak is a strong contender. I think Liz is a very good candidate. She's my favourite candidate. I think she has a fresh approach, which is what we need. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
The American President Joe Biden says he's doing great and keeping busy after testing positive for COVID-19. The White House says Mr. Biden will continue to work in isolation for the next 5 days until he tests negative. The president, who's 79 years old, says he's had mild symptoms and is grateful for the support.
I'm doing well. I'm getting a lot of work done. I'm going to continue to get it done. And in the meantime, thanks for your concern. And keep the faith. It's going to be okay.
Here, the Home Office's handling of the small boat crisis in the English Channel has been described as poor in a new watchdog report. The Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration has called for a more strategic response to migrant crossings, saying the system is overwhelmed. David Neal also said data recorded on the migrants was awful and the security checks were unreliable. The Home Office has responded by saying it's since transformed arrangements. Reports of crime in England and Wales have reached a 20-year high. Data from the Office for National Statistics shows that 6.3 million offences were recorded in the year up to March, with a sharp rise in fraud, rape and violent attacks. Knife crime, theft and domestic abuse also increased. The Home Office says the figures are likely to reflect improved crime recording. And lastly, the Queen's jewels will be displayed at Buckingham Palace from tomorrow as part of an exhibition to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee. Along with tiaras, earrings and necklaces, visitors will also have the chance to take in images of the Queen's historic reign. The jewellery on display includes the coronet the then Prince Elizabeth wore to her parents' coronation in 1937. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. And now it's time to get back to Dan Wootton Tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight, now on Our Media Buzz. First front pages are in. The Metro leads with the BBC's apology to Prince Harry and William's nanny with the dramatic headline, "We let Diana down." The Beeb pay substantial damages to Tiggy Leg Bork, now Alexandra Pettifer, after the broadcaster fabricated allegations she had an affair with Prince Charles in order to land the now infamous Panorama interview in '95. Austerity warning over ridiculous trust plan is the Independent headline, as experts warn that her £30 billion tax cuts will fuel inflation. Rishi, meanwhile, has refused to bring forward any tax cuts to woo Tory voters. The Daily Telegraph leads with the announcement that under Sunak's leadership there would be no tax cuts until late next year. He also reportedly accused Liz Truss of misleading the public with her plans. It features a photo of Prince George, who celebrates his 9th birthday tomorrow. My Superstar panel back with me now, broadcaster and Loose Women star Carol McGiffin, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Cowell. We haven't even made it through July, and the COVID zealots in the health establishment already want your liberties. The editors of the British Medical Journal and the Health Service Journal, Dr. Kamran Abbasi and Alistair McLennan, who has no medical training, by the way, they've demanded a return to mask mandates and restrictions on numbers of people gathering in order to save the NHS from, quote, dying. They also want the £2 billion a week free testing scheme reintroduced, as well as working from home where possible. Now, this dangerous duo, I'm going to call them that, a dangerous duo, accused the government of gaslighting the public about the threat of COVID in a scathing editorial, before adding, now is the time to face the fact that the nation's attempt to live with COVID is the straw that is breaking the NHS's back. The heart of the problem is the failure to recognise that the pandemic is far from over and that a return to some of the measures taken in the past 2 years is needed. I mean, these demands look even more deranged when you consider the country is on course to be almost completely clear of COVID by the end of August. For now, this graph tells you what you need to know. But I'm not sure it's the science, really, that matters to these health establishment hysterics. It's control. Carol McGiffin, I mean, this is dangerous now, isn't it? Because this is something else. This is no longer about COVID, is it? This is literally about containing human beings at home as much as possible because the health service might be a little bit pushed. I mean, can you get your head around this?
No, I can't. I can't even bear to listen to any of it. And I look at it and I think, you know me, I just question everything because nothing seems right. Nothing seems to make any sense. And I look at this and I think, hang on a minute, is it the health establishment that want to control us? I don't know. Or is someone pulling their strings as well? Is this another nudge? That's what I'm saying. And it feels like that.
Well, we're being nudged all the time now, aren't we?
Yeah, all the time.
Because you saw it with the heat wave this week.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like this is the new sage, right? So the government... And I remember saying to you years ago on another station about, you know, the government knew what they were doing. Sage are giving them science. They've got paid for science, which they've almost admitted to now. They almost admitted that, you know, we got the results that the government needed to do what they had to do. And it's almost like the BMJ and the other one, whatever it is, it's almost like they're getting this stuff to order. Like, let's say this, because if we say it, it comes across as a little bit more credible.
And a bit more independent.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people do... I don't know, they kind of listen to it. I think a lot of people are going to say no. They'll just say, no, I'm not doing that again. We're not doing that again. COVID is here. We're living with it now. People are still getting it. Even the triple jab, the quadruple jab people are still getting it. Everyone's getting it, but no one's really sick. I don't believe that NHS story. It's not dying because of COVID.
No, and the thing is that I think you're right that people are so prepared to listen to it now because I use the example of Monday and Tuesday. And yeah, it was hot, OK? It was really hot. But there was absolutely no reason for young and healthy people to stay at home. But I walked around central London a lot that day. I was actually loving being out in the heat because it felt like being in Thailand or Miami or something, you know. It really wasn't like being in London. But honestly, people were not out. It was like literally being back in that first COVID lockdown. So people are now very attuned to this concept of something happens and we stay at home. And this is why I've always been concerned that this whole strategy could soon be applied for eco-lockdowns, for example.
Oh, definitely. I think that's the next thing. They're working their way up to that, the climate lockdowns. And this is the start of it. It's like, don't go out because you might spontaneously combust. You know, I read a story that they were saying that ambulances waiting outside A&E might just catch fire. I mean, have you ever heard of that ever happening anywhere in the world? Anywhere where it gets like to 40, 50 degrees? No. I mean, it's just nonsense. And I think you're right. It's just preparing people for something that they can't get away with anymore.
The issue is now, people have always trusted the government. That's what governments were for. And I think they're leaning on that to sell some messages because this hasn't come from the government. It's come from somebody else who's suggesting the government should do another thing. But there's 2 points I want to make, really. Firstly, they've got it arse about face. Yeah, the NHS. It's not our job to protect the NHS. No. It's the NHS's job to protect us. We, as a nation, you sat at home now, pay £140 billion annually into the NHS. They should be spending that money more efficiently. We all love the NHS, but it doesn't mean it should be...
Well, and also, by the way, Amy, there's loads of other things that should be banned if we follow down this path. Like, seriously, OK, we need to ban cars, we need to ban cigarettes, we need to ban alcohols, because that's actually the stuff that puts the real pressure on the NHS. This is madness, isn't it, Amy?
If we just rewind a little bit and just look at this particular subject of COVID that we're talking about.
BMJ
so at
and
the
the
moment,
health service
1 in 30 people do have COVID, and I agree with Sean that the NHS could be doing more about this. I don't at all agree that we need to have more masks, more lockdowns. I'm completely up. But there are things we can do. The taking away free testing, they did that too early.
Well, it's bankrupting the country. £2 billion. So you want free tests?
Yeah, I do, because at the moment...
Why should anyone even test?
Let me give an example. So currently, if you visit a care home, they're not testing you. There's no free tests. That's a situation where free tests could really benefit people. Also, I think there should be the opportunity for booster injections for the over 50s across the board. That would just limit this. I think burying your head in the sand and saying, oh, COVID's not a problem anymore. It is a problem at the moment. 1 in 30 people do have COVID. COVID at the moment. So it's just...
We don't know that.
It's just,
No, but hold on,
we don't know that.
No, the
we
thing
know
is,
that as much.
No,
as
it's
your
based
graph,
on
you just
No,
showed.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if everybody has COVID. What is the effect of COVID? You know, I've had a cold. I'm fine. I'll live. What is COVID doing? There's a difference between having COVID and it doing something. And the important thing is this: if you build a nation of fear.
But we have.
Yeah, then it means control can slowly be taken away from people. Freedoms can be taken away.
It's not fair, it's
and
just
that's the thing
fear.
that
That's
worries
what's
me.
happening.
And the other piece is, as well, we've got to look at having more respect for the bill payer. This talk about what the government should do, there's been no deep research into the effects of shutting down society, shutting down your economy, because there's a strong argument that kills more people than COVID ever will.
But that's precisely what you'll have to do unless you mitigate to the best of your abilities with things that are easy to adopt, like more ventilation, free testing, and boosters for the over 50s. I'm not calling for lockdowns.
Amy,
because people are going into care homes with vulnerable people and people are getting infected. This is just a realistic way of living with COVID.
OK, it's just so interesting the way that you think, because COVID is now, and even the nutters, like, you know, well, the extremists like Van Tam admit, by the way, that COVID is now no more extreme than seasonal flu.
Well,
did you ever want to shut the country down for seasonal flu? Did you ever want mass testing for seasonal flu?
Let me answer it then. They're not comparable because COVID is much more prevalent and contagious than seasonal flu. It affects more people. And with seasonal flu, we have got the flu vaccine.
OK, what was the point of the vaccine?
I think the vaccine rollout has been incredibly effective. If we could keep that going and keep the rates down in terms of the amount of people that...
How many times was Biden jabbed? He's just got COVID today.
Our response has to be proportionate. If COVID doesn't kill people, if COVID isn't affecting people's ability to walk around and be safe, then we must lower the amount of money we put into it and our extreme response to it. It's about the effect. It's not just about its existence.
But my
and that's what worries me.
suggestions are not extreme. They're just realistic.
They are extreme. Because do you think this country can afford £2 billion a week on unnecessary testing? Do you not understand? We're bankrupt pretty much. We can't afford £2 billion a week. £2 billion a week.
And also, there's a different effect from that testing. That testing alarms people. If people think we have to test for this thing all the time, it alarms me. And here's the thing we need to understand about COVID and our response to it, is devastating the futures of young people. It's making businesses impossible to run, and that's how people employ themselves.
Well, that is the legacy.
Their families.
That is the legacy, exactly. Now, as we know, Penny Mordaunt was knocked out of the Tory leadership race this week after her campaign was torpedoed by a wave of colleagues, past and present. They trashed her record and office, her work ethic, and her cringeworthy attempts to backtrack on historical woke comments. In one incident, Penny's current boss at the Department for International Trade, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, didn't hold back when she essentially said Mordaunt was a lazy worker. Watch.
There have been a number of times when she hasn't been available, which would have been useful, and other ministers have picked up the pieces, yes. But it has been the case, and I answered the question honestly, that in the last few months there have been a number of times when Penny has not been able to pick up what would have been her departmental duties.
Today, though, the former naval reservist proved she's still got some wind in her sails despite falling short in the race to number 10. This is great. So Anne-Marie Trevelyan was sitting almost next to her on the Commons benches, and Penny fired back at her boss's scathing attack when she took to the dispatch box. Watch.
Can I pay tribute to my right honourable friend for a fantastic and brave and clean campaign for the leadership of the Conservative Party and to be Prime Minister?
Well, I thank my right honourable friend. Yes, I'm sort of amazed to find myself here this morning, given my reported work ethic, but I am here.
Good on her, good on her. I mean, look, I personally wasn't massively keen on her in the final two, but she had one heck of a week. She had one heck of a week. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Carol McGiffin, do stand by, because coming up, as Liz Truss tells GB News, she's frustrated when she's compared to Thatcher. It's likening her to the Iron Lady sexist. Plus, we'll get stuck into those intolerant woke-topians changing the name of Quidditch because of J.K. Rowling, honestly. Don't get me started on that. My Superstar panel will return to debate that after 10:30. But before that, acclaimed biographer Tom Powell's explosive new book, Revenge, is out today. And he joins me to deliver more bombshell revelations about the Duke and Duchess of Woke straight after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. Acclaimed author Tom Bower has made his name writing bombshell biographies about public figures, including Boris Johnson and Simon Cowell. But his latest might just be his most explosive yet. Revenge. Meghan, Harry and the war between the Windsors is out today and is a brilliant insider's account of the royal couple, packed full of stunning revelations, including the truth about Bridesmaidgate. Apparently, Meghan did make Kate cry during a bridesmaid fitting before the royal wedding after she made a cruel jibe about her daughter, Charlotte. Tom also reveals that the Duchess of Sussex was prone to unpredictable outbursts and that she was a diva before she even met Harry, demanding first-class flights and free accommodation for business trips. And there's plenty more insights like that, which is probably why the looming release of the book overshadowed the couple's recent trip to the UN. Watch.
Prince Harry, are you worried that Tom Bower's new book is going to widen your rift with the royal family?
And here it is. Revenge. I'm delighted to say Tom joins me now. Now, Tom, I'm actually very angry with you because I was up until about 4 a.m. last night because I could get it at midnight and I was just completely gripped. I was completely gripped.
And have you forgiven me yet?
I've forgiven you. I am mentioned in the book, but it's all good. It's all good. And we did talk, didn't we? We did talk because I was involved a little bit in terms of Megxit and all of that sort of thing. But look, there's loads of revelations. So I want to talk about some of the key ones. The first, which was a bit of a bolt from the blue, it has to be said. So, you know, there's all of this talk about were the royal family racist and what comments did they make about Meghan and Harry's unborn baby? Will you report that Camilla remarked in a conversation with Harry and Meghan, wouldn't it be funny if your child had ginger afro hair? And Harry apparently took it well at the time, but then Meghan got into his head. So tell me, was this the comment that was talked about in the open?
I heard it from a close insider. But Camilla just said it as, wouldn't it be fun? But this is long, long before they even got engaged. And Meghan's story on the Oprah Winfrey show was that the comment was made when she was already pregnant. And that was completely untrue. And what was scandalous was that Oprah Winfrey, unlike you, did not challenge the two of them or wishes the truth.
Well, she didn't challenge them on
at
one
all.
thing, did
and
she?
So Meghan got away with this idea that there was a racist comment. I don't think Camilla's comment was anyway racist at all. It was just the sort of thing you say when Harry said he was deeply in love with Meghan and he imagined he might get married, and she just made a flippant comment, as one does. It's nothing serious at all. And so I thought that, and the way that Meghan then used it, huge damage to the royal family, and most unfair.
This all makes a lot of sense, though, doesn't it? Because, of course, Harry did not release any sort of statement about Camilla when the Queen made that very significant announcement that she will be Queen Consort upon her death. So clearly, because we knew about the feud, didn't we, between Kate and William and Harry, but clearly this also signifies some sort of feud between Camilla and Meghan and Harry.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, you've got to always remember that Harry and William never loved Camilla for her role in the destruction of their parents' marriage. So there was no love lost there. But I'm sure that there was a lot of poison sown as well after that. I mean, and Camilla, I think, to her credit, probably did try. And Charles was not going to let Camilla be sidelined. I mean, I think that's clear too. But these are all the undercurrents in what led to Megxit and thereafter.
You have also solved this great mystery over whether Kate or Meghan was responsible for the other one crying during this famous bridesmaid fitting. And you say it was Meghan who made Kate burst into tears. But the new information that you have received is it's because, and this sounds just awful, that Meghan compared her goddaughter, Ivy, who I believe is the daughter of Jessica Mulroney, her former best friend before she ditched her too. She compared Ivy against Charlotte, sort of played the two.
Well, this is very familiar territory for Meghan. She's very good at playing people off, the manipulation. That's very much what the people in Buckingham Palace complained about, that they were what they called allegedly bullying, was the playing off of people. And she did it, of course, in the Reitman's ad shoot as well, which was a great saga. Well, I'm told that she played the children off, and that made Kate very unhappy. She built Ivy up. I mean, they're innocent children, but she never stopped. And that's part of the way that Meghan likes to control everything, the narrative, every people around her. They don't do what she wants. They're ghosted and cast out. And unfortunately, that's what happened, I'm told, in that situation.
Perhaps the most sensational revelation in the book was the fact that the Queen, on, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, the morning of Prince Philip's funeral, expressed relief that Meghan wasn't going to be attending. I mean, that is huge. What does that tell you about Meghan's relationship with the royal family?
Well, I think the Queen on that day, clearly under huge pressure, deeply upset and all the rest of it, and it came from an impeccable source, just felt she didn't want to have Meghan diverting attention from her husband and from the ceremony, and knew that if Meghan had come, that's what was going to happen. And I think that then expressed itself again in the Jubilee. I mean, what was really a remarkable story I heard was that, Meghan and Harry were late to get to the St. Paul's Cathedral deliberately so that they could make their own grand entrance. As they're walking down the aisle, they get to their seats, 9 and 10. They say, well, everyone should move up so they could be on the aisle itself. No, says the usher to Prince Harry, no, you're to sit 9 and 10. Who told you to tell me where to sit? Your grandmother, says the usher. And he goes to the middle. And they really did, in the end, control it. No photographs on the next day at the Jubilee meeting in Windsor Castle, all the rest. So I think they have controlled it.
The Queen's seen through them.
The Queen's seen through them. And I think Charles and William have encouraged her too. But I think they hope for peace. But my feeling is that Harry is now pondering whether he should take his revenge as well for having been slighted during the Jubilee, reduced status. And of course, his revenge would be in the book he's going to write. Meghan has had partly her revenge in Oprah Winfrey, but I think the only way they can monetize themselves is by more and more revenge against the family, who in the end wished them so well and wanted them to be members of the family.
Well, there's a really interesting part of the book, and this was something that I'd never read before, where you suggest quite early on Harry actually realised Meghan was very important to him too, and he really wanted to make the relationship work because he had this dawning realisation that his role in the royal family was going to be fast diminished. So it wasn't just a case... I mean, clearly we know Meghan wanted the spotlight, right? We all know that, and the book is brilliant because it goes into all of her fame-seeking attempts in London to get with the footballer Ashley Cole and all of that. But we knew a bit about this. But what you imply is that Harry, too, realised that he needed to date a celebrity in order for his future to be secure.
And I think what's very important there is the conversations that Meghan had with her publicist agent, Gina Nelthorpe-Cowan, both on the day that she was to meet Harry and thereafter. And it was very much Meghan saying, I'm going to get this man, I've got this man, I've got him trapped, he's now mine. And Gina saying, are you sure you know what you're doing? Do you know where this is leading? And Meghan says, no negativity, I know what I'm doing. And this is really part of the whole Meghan manhunt, the successful manhunt, which the book describes. And that's part of her whole life. I mean, what you're not mentioning is very interesting about the first marriage to Trevor, where she deliberately decides to stay in Toronto instead of living with her husband and commuting to film in Toronto like all the other cast. She stays there, separate life straight away. He was a safety net. Once she's got money, he's dumped in a terrible way. The same with the boyfriend, Corey Vitiello, the chef in Toronto. She uses him, all well and good, then decides he won't fulfill the needs that she has, her aspirations.
Uses, that's a really interesting word, because you really get the sense that Meghan doesn't have any genuine relationships with folk that are based on humanity. She seems to use people to climb up the ladder. Is that what you found?
I think, and there's a very interesting relationship she has with the New York hotelier, John Fitzpatrick, who introduces her critically to Hillary Clinton, which changes her life completely in the sense of politics. And that's another example. And, of course, once her father is no use to her, he's dumped too. And this poor man in Mexico can't understand why his beloved daughter has treated him like this, and all the way round. And the question, of course, is, will Harry soon be surplus to requirements? But we don't know the answer to that yet. That's still to come.
I mean, Tom, when you look at the way that she's treated lots of people, when you look at the way that she's really thrown her own family into the trash, when you look at the way that she acted during the Vogue magazine edit and the interview with Vanity Fair, and you've got loads of new information about that, can you really say that Meghan is a good, nice humanitarian as she claims?
No, but on the other hand, she's very successful at what she wants to do. And that's what's so interesting about her. That in her own terms, she's now risen from being an unknown actress into a global star. And all she's now got to do is fight hard to stay at the top of the greasy pole. And that, of course, is a major challenge for her, as it always is for everybody. But she's sassy. Whether she makes it or not, we'll see. It may all come crashing down. But, people who are so ambitious for power, for wealth, are they ever nice people? I don't think so. They're always scheming and manipulative. And the smile is a Richter smile. Yeah. And you've really got to be wary of that.
And you imply, by the way, that she really had no intention of ever properly introducing her father, Thomas, to the royal family. You suggest that she was already preparing to cut him out of her life.
And he tells that story emotionally and very graphically in the book. But, of course, what he says is that he couldn't understand why he was cut out. I mean, his wife, ex-wife, the mother, gets loads and loads of attention, and he is completely ordered to be isolated. He claims, in the book, that Doria, his ex-wife, cut him out for her own purposes, and Meghan went along with it. And, of course, he's very hurt by that, and by the whole paparazzi thing was forced on him. I mean, the point about Meghan is it's so blatant now. We can now, through the book and everything else, see the path to fame and fortune. And it is an astonishing rise. The thing is, it's also the rise then could lead to the fall.
And just finally, where do you think the revenge will take them? Because the relations with the monarchy are at such a low point. Is it possible that, for example, after the death of the Queen, which we obviously hope will be a long time away, but is it possible that Harry and Meghan might actually turn on the whole concept of the monarchy?
Well, I don't think they can turn on the whole concept, because then their fortune depends on being royals. But they have got their fortune also depends on being sensational and attacking them when they can in whatever way to make sure that they earn their money. And that is why this is unfinished business.
Yes, well, there it is. Revenge by Tom Bauer. It's a really good read. Lots of revelations out today. Meghan, Harry, and the war between the Windsors. Tom Bauer, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, coming up in Uncancelled, there's something goofy going on at Disneyland as they replace, I can't believe this, fairy godmothers with gender-neutral terms like apprentices. So Panto legend Christopher Biggins joins me to discuss this woke madness. But next, Fishy Rishi claims he's the heir to Maggie's throne, but as Liz Truss tells GB News she's tired of the comparison. Is it sexist to compare her to the Iron Lady? Plus, why are Quidditch woke-topians ditching their sports creator J.K. Rowling? My superstar panel will get my teeth into all of that in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio,
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
So let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. Lots of front pages are now in. So The Guardian leads with Rishi Sunak's attack on Liz Truss's economic policies, claiming her £30 billion plans for unfunded tax cuts risk stoking inflation and pushing up interest rates. That comes as Truss takes a commanding lead in the race. The Eye leads with Mordaunt's Revenge, a new plot from Penny Mordaunt supporters to stop Liz Truss taking the keys to number 10. The party reports some Tory grassroots groups are actively working to make sure the Foreign Secretary doesn't win the leadership race with a, quote, Stop Liz Truss campaign. The Daily Star also leads on the BBC's admission that they let Diana down over fabricated claims about the nanny. They write that holier-than-thou beat bosses have apologised to pretty much the entire royal family, including Prince Charles, Prince William, and the whiny bloke, and even the nanny. The Express also leads with the same story about the Beeb's apology, as well as a beautiful photo of Tory leadership candidate Liz Truss. She's got better with age, I think it's fair to say. The Daily Mirror covers calls from Princess Diana's brother Earl Spencer, who is urging police to now charge those at the BBC behind her infamous Bashir interview. I don't really like the idea of us, charging journalists for interviews. But anyway, The Sun reveals that the son of the late Jade Goody has landed a top role in EastEnders. Bobby Brazier, Jade's 19-year-old boy with the brilliant Jeff Brazier, has been cast as a mischievous member of the Slater family. Good on him. Jade would be very proud of that. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, broadcaster and Loose Women star Carol McGiffin, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and author and journalist Amy Nicole. Now, there's 6 weeks to go in the Tory leadership race, but a brand new YouGov poll has Liz Truss smashing Rishi Sunak with 62% of Conservative members backing the Foreign Secretary. Truss's uncompromising approach, along with her pledge to cut taxes and boost defence spending, means that many are billing her as the new Iron Lady. And let's be honest, there are similarities between the wardrobes too. Personally, I loved this inspired choice of outfit for the debate. However, in an interview on GBNews this morning with Eamon Holmes and Isabel Webster, Truss revealed that she considers the comparison to be a little bit sexist.
In cultivating an image, you get certain pictures. There are those who would say, with the kitten bow and everything else and the tanks and all that, you're sort of trying to be aligned or making people hark back to Margaret Thatcher. But there are other people who would say, well, she's no more than a Margaret Thatcher tribute act. What would you say to that?
It is quite frustrating that female politicians always get compared to Margaret Thatcher, whereas male politicians don't get compared to Ted Heath.
So, Carol McGiffin, is it sexist to compare Truss to Maggie?
I don't think it is. I think it should be a bit of a compliment.
Yeah.
To compare someone or someone who is in a competition to what I would say could be was one of the greatest prime ministers we ever had, but then to use Ted Heath as the male comparison, I mean, no, not exactly the best and the worst. No, I think it's unnecessary, and it's just because they're women. That's it. But where was Theresa May in that comparison? There was no comparison to Theresa May, was there? But really, everybody wants to be like Margaret Thatcher. Yes,
Amy, isn't it just a big compliment to be compared to Margaret Thatcher, one of the best prime ministers we've ever had, right?
I'm sure. There's a lot of people who would say it's a compliment. There's a lot of people that would say it's the absolute worst.
But do you think it is?
Insult possible. I'm not the biggest fan of the way Margaret Thatcher operated, but I don't think this...
Knock me down with
I don't think this comparison is sexist, more so than just lazy. It's like, oh, a woman Conservative politician has to be like Margaret Thatcher. Interestingly, I read today that Margaret Thatcher, you know that infamous bow she wears, she wasn't even a fan of it. She thought it was a bit too much. Margaret Thatcher herself, I just thought that was interesting.
Sean, do you know what is quite interesting about this is that while Truss is sort of backing away from it, Sunak is desperately trying to tell anyone who will listen, I'm Thatcherite, I'm the new Mackie. So it's interesting, isn't it, that Sunak wants to be seen as being like Thatcher and Truss doesn't.
I think I can see Liz's point. If you want to be leader of the Conservative Party now, particularly if you're going to PM, you want it to be about you, your plans right here, right now. You don't need to hark back to our glorious past. Margaret Thatcher was good in her time. This is about Liz's time as far as Liz is concerned. The reason Sunak is trying to hark back to that is because he needs to build some kind of warm feeling within the party. Margaret Thatcher is a leviathan of British politics. It is a fact. There's many who think she's the best Prime Minister since Churchill. So if he can attach himself to those warm feelings, remembering people have seen him as a globalist, people have seen him as someone attached to Dominic Cummings, people have seen him as someone who spent all their money for very little return.
He's a tax-rising chancellor. He's had 2 years to prove everything you're saying. Yeah, but he hasn't done that.
He's done all of the things I've suggested. You've just proved my point. The point being this, though. I think Liz is correct when she says, don't compare me to Margaret Thatcher. This is about Liz, Truss, and about what I will do for the country going forward.
And it's a different time, different context, different everything. It's incomparable across the board. It's just lazy because they have no economic
I tell you the
vision.
one thing that is really good about the comparison, though. It emphasises, again, we are the party, the Conservative Party. We have no quotas, but yet we have more black male MPs than the Labour Party, and we are potentially on our third female Prime Minister.
Exactly. And Labour, with all of the quotas, always goes for straight white blokes.
Exactly.
Now, as you will know, in recent years, the brave creator of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, has been vilified for her stance on women's rights and the trans debate by the radical left and even by her hand-picked Harry Potter cast. Since publishing the first book back in 1997, Rowling's Wizarding World has become a global phenomenon. Even the game she invented, I mean, this is weird, isn't it? Quidditch has been taken up by us muggles. The sport is particularly popular at universities, obviously a modified version of the magical flying game with its enchanting balls whizzing around the pitch. However, Quidditch organisations around the world and in the UK have announced they will be changing the name of the sport to quad ball to distance themselves from Rowling over her transgender views. I mean, this is outrageous because if it wasn't for J.K. Rowling, these dorks wouldn't even have a sport to play. They should show some respect to the creator, right, Carol McGiffin?
Well, exactly right. I didn't know any of this. I don't know anything about Harry Potter.
So, do you know, I haven't read a word. I don't even know what I mean when I'm saying muggles. I don't even know what I mean.
Exactly. So they invented a game off the back of something that she invented.
Well, she invented it, didn't she? And they just play it. Well, exactly. They play her game, and now they don't want to have anything to do with her.
Of it. And now oh my God. And this is just wokeness gone berserk.
Amy, can you understand it?
I do think it's kind of funny that the game is just swinging balls like round a pitch when you imagine
with a stick between your
legs. But the context of this in the light of why people have a problem with J.K. Rowling, I just think that's quite poetic, really. But no, honestly, I don't think there's much of a story here. I think it's just a case of probably they couldn't endorse the word Quidditch because it's got some sort of copyright on it.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's specifically Sean because of her views on trans.
I'll say this. I'll say, firstly, Quidditch will never be an Olympic sport. It is utterly ridiculous. That's the first thing. And I think, secondly, these people actually should take a deeper look. She's been vilified. This author, but she has been very strong on women's rights. And I wonder, was it a bunch of men who made this decision?
No, she's also...
I wonder that. I wonder. Was it a bunch of men who decided to cancel this woman?
I mean, who's playing this Quidditch thing?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Got to be a bit odd, right?
Yeah.
Got to be a bit odd.
J.K. Rowling...
Bunch of rugby lookalikes.
There is a real message here, though, because she has completely undermined and eradicated trans rights. She's
Amy! Give it a rest.
We're doing so well.
Amy's entitled
It
to
is
a
a
view.
point.
Amy's entitled to a view, but the other point, Amy, if you look at it the other way, she's been a staunch support of women's rights. And the risk here, is, again, there's another bunch of men making decisions for women.
But Amy wants to cancel J.K. Rowling.
But J.K. Rowling wants to cancel the existence
No, she
of
doesn't.
trans
No,
women.
she doesn't. She doesn't. She has full respect for the trans community. Go and read her essay when she spoke about why she believes in women's rights because she's a victim of sexual abuse.
I think it all came from menstruating bodies.
Do you know what the real risk is here?
What do we call them? That's eradicating the existence of trans people.
The real risk here is mainstream people, us, start cancelling other people. Now, Quidditch is not important to me, but I now no longer feel that I could go and watch Quidditch. I would.
No, and I won't, because you're the
Look, let's just get back to it. Quidditch, ridiculous.
Sean Bailey,
This is not a
Carol McGiffin, thank you so much. And coming up, my superstar panel return to nominate their greatest Britain and Union jackasses for the day. But next, an uncancelled Christopher Biggins wades in on woke madness at Disney World after fairy godmothers are replaced with gender-neutral terms like apprentices. First, though, here's what's coming up on Monday's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight in an exclusive interview with Brexit mastermind Lord David Frost, I'll find out why he's backing Liz Truss to become Prime Minister and take the European Union to task. Plus, GB News star Neil Oliver and positive Professor Carol Sikora give their unfiltered take on what's really going on in the world, and I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and esteemed political journalist John Sargent. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncats. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. There will no longer be 3 wishes for children at Disney World because the company has announced they will be replacing fairy godmothers with gender-neutral terms. That's right, this much-loved character from Cinderella has been given the boot for not being inclusive enough. Usually a highlight of visiting Disney World involves a trip to the salon where fairy godmothers in training give makeovers to kids aged 3 to 12 and transform them into princesses, knights and other characters. But from August, they'll have the privilege of being dressed up by a magical apprentice. And the Disney streaming blog Streaming the Magic said of the decision this way: cast members that might not identify as female can still be part of the process to dress up and style children without having to refer to themselves as a female Disney character. Well, I'm joined now by a panto legend who loves nothing more than dressing up as a female character, Christopher Biggins. Honestly, how sad... My mum sent me this story this morning and I literally couldn't even believe it was true because Disney is now depriving children of magic, right?
It is just appalling. I mean, it makes me feel ill. I mean, I get so wrought about this. I mean, it's just terrifying. I mean, the next thing they'll be doing is they'll be saying, right, no man can dress up as a woman and be a dame. I'll be out of business. I mean, it is just ridiculous. This is what people want. Fairy godmothers are marvellous creatures that have been created since beginning of time to bring love and joy to everybody, and especially children. And they're depriving children of this wonderful, wonderful person. I just can't believe it. Well, Disney, shocking news.
And do you know what makes me so angry about it, Biggins? They're ruining the fun for everyone. Look, if someone doesn't want to be a fairy godmother, then they can call themselves an apprentice if they want, but you don't need to eradicate fairy godmothers altogether.
No, absolutely. And, you know, Disney is such a good force for entertainment. I mean, you know, at the moment, they've got a wonderful show on at Drury Lane. You know, and Disney everything they do, Disney, is fantastic. And for them to do this, I don't understand it. I would like to know who it is at Disney who is doing this, because they should be taken out and dealt with by all fairy godmothers that I know.
Do you know what? It's a whole load of the executives at Disney, and they have gone very, very woke, and there's a lot of scandal behind it. But the issue is, Christopher, I think they've got to be really careful, because what's going to be next? I mean, you talk about Frozen. I mean, are they going to be able to have a Princess Jasmine in future iterations if all of their characters have to become gender neutral? You couldn't have a prince or princess at all.
I mean, didn't they get rid of several years ago the dwarfs? They went, didn't they? We can't have dwarfs anymore.
And you can't call the seven dwarfs anymore.
Oh, you've got to issue something else. There's another word. I've no idea what those words are. I don't take those on. They're some sort of strange little things, aren't they?
And you can't do dwarfs and pantos anymore.
No, you can't. You have to have grown men on their knees with big shoes on their knees walking around. It's quite funny, but I mean, it's not the same, you know. It's lovely to have a person. What do I call them, Carol? A little person.
Little people. But the thing is, Christopher, seriously, though, this is going to really change the way kids experience Disney. And also, what I thought was so ridiculous about it, lots of little boys want to be princesses too, or want to be fairy godmothers, and that's fine. No one's trying to stop that. But Disney stripping gender out of everything, I just think is so dangerous.
I've always wanted to be a fairy godmother. I'm afraid, yes. No, I mean, it is the saddest thing. I mean, I can't comprehend how people would think like this, to change children's imagery so much, the things that they've enjoyed and loved for years. And, you know, your mother, there she is, an example of someone who loves that, you know, image of a fairy godmother and all those characters that Disney have created.
She was completely shocked, and I think it is a really slippery slope. And I think what's going to happen as well, that Disney has to be really careful not to go down the Netflix route. Because have you seen, they are literally losing millions and millions of subscribers, because if you are tuned into Netflix, you know that they're trying to shove woke ideology down your throat, which is why they've done things like ditch the programme that was coming up, their woke programme coming up by Meghan Markle. So Disney has to be careful too, because they're wanting us all to sign up to their new service, Disney Plus, now. And there's a lot of folk, especially in America, who just will cancel their subscriptions if they think that Disney is trying to portray a woke version of the world.
And Disney World, you know, you go there, they're everywhere. All these wonderful characters that have been created. Are they going to get rid of all of those?
Yeah.
I don't think so. They lose a fortune.
Exactly. Well, Christopher Biggins, they can't get rid of the Dame and Panto, can they?
Well, nothing would surprise me. I mean, because there are a few women who play pantomime dames. Looking just around this room, I can see a few. And, you know, it's interesting that this could possibly happen, which would be a disaster, because people love to see a big man, in a frock, being funny.
And what does that mean for drag queens as well?
Absolutely. Terrible.
I mean, we've just got to stop this. We just have to stop
yeah.
it. Biggins,
we'll stop it. I'll wave my wand.
A message of sanity. Wave your wand and stop this madness from Disney. Christopher Biggins, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
So it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. And and our very own fairy godmother, Carol McGiffin, can kick this off. Or, Carol, are you the pantomime dame? Maybe. Anyway, who's your greatest Britain?
My greatest Britain tonight is Peter Hitchens, who did a sterling job yesterday on Jubes' show, Michelle Dewberry's show, basically pointing out that Boris was brought down by a cake and a party, whereas Tony Blair, when he left the Commons, he had a massive, massive round of applause and he started an actual illegal war. So I just...
I think we've got a little bit of Peter in action. Should we have a look, Carol?
Yes, please.
It still seems to me to be very strange that Blair, a man who was at least partly responsible for one of the worst, stupidest and bloodiest wars in human history, which did nothing but harm, stayed in office and wasn't driven from it. Johnson, who did something to do with cakes or a glass of wines, hounded from office as if he'd committed some terrible war crime.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Sean Bailey, your greatest Briton.
My honorary greatest Briton is Dave Chappelle. He's had a few of his Minneapolis shows have been canned because the venue caved to pressure from some pressure groups. And it shows you that we just can't let this happen. In the arts especially, we must have freedom of speech. So I'm supporting Dave Chappelle.
And Amy Nicole, your greatest Britain nominee.
So my greatest Britain nominee this week is Liz Truss.
Oh, brilliant! Excellent! OK, that's great.
What?
That's all you need to say.
For having this self-awareness to tweet that when she becomes Prime Minister, she'll hit the ground.
Well, Amy, it probably wasn't done by her. It was probably done by her social media team. It was quickly deleted and she made the point, hit the ground running.
Did make the point.
Well, do you know what? I actually don't care why you've nominated her for your nasty little reason. Liz Truss, today's greatest Briton, our next Prime Minister.
Freezer 2.0.
A backhanded win for Amy Nicole there. Union Jackass time, Carol McGiffin, your nominee.
My Union Jackass tonight is Rishi Sunak. Not just for that video, but this morning he sent out goodie bags to all the lobby journalists to try and bribe them. And I think what was in it was a can of...
There it is, yeah.
Yeah, oh, there it is. Oh, my God.
Can of Coke. He's the richest man ever.
And some suntan lotion, because basically it's like ready for Rishi, ready for sunshine.
Carol, I could not believe this. That means he spent lots of money to make personalised sunscreen. And it's like, mate, you already have all of the establishment and all of the MSM backing you. You don't need to bribe them with sunscreen. Unbelievable. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My Union Jackass is Just Stop Oil, who this week closed down large parts of the M25. Look, here's the pain here. They're causing ordinary people such pain, confusion. They're putting lives at risk, and they're not bringing anybody on side. We all know that there's a climate issue here.
No,
the way
very
in which
good
they're
point.
doing it suggests they know more about life than we do, and it's got to stop. It's dangerous, it's a waste of time, and they're going against.
Amy Nicole, your Union Jackass.
So I was going to pick Conservative MPs for their terrible final two, but I want to go Rishi Sunak because he should have done first-class flights to Saint-Tropez and some creme de la mer with his money.
Well, look, I am certainly going for Rishi Sunak as the Union Jackass, but specifically for that reason, I just feel like bribery of your mates in the press, not a good look.
Double
not a
win
good
for
look.
me then,
and they're
Dan.
backing you anyway. What a superstar panel. Carol McGiffin, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole, thank you so much to all of you. I'm, of course, back Monday night from 9 p.m. Have an amazing weekend. Headline is up next now. Good night.
Good evening, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Tomorrow promises, again, a lot of cloud, but more showers to come tomorrow and, in places, the potential for some pretty lively thunderstorms. At the moment, high pressure is kind of in control, but weather fronts are approaching from the west. They'll mix things up through the weekends, but also pushing up from the south, we have a few more showers overnight. So turning a little bit damp and drizzly over parts of southern England and the Midlands, a few scattered showers keeping going over southern and eastern parts of Scotland. Either side, most places dry. Quite a warm night across the south, not the oppressive heat of a few nights ago, of course, but temperatures still holding up in the mid to high teens elsewhere, 12 to 14 Celsius generally. On to Friday, and as I said, a lot of clouds, some sunny spells for East Anglia and certainly across Northern Ireland, by and large a fine day. But in the south, the potential for some hit-and-miss thunderstorms Not everywhere in the Met Office yellow warning area will see those downpours, but where they do occur, they could cause some problems, dropping a lot of rain in a short space of time. Showers too for the Midlands, extending into northern England. Scattered showers across Scotland. A cool day on the whole, but temperatures in the south could still get into the mid-20s, and still a potential for some of those thunderstorms to rumble on well into the evening before they start to fade, and most places turn dry as we head into the weekend. Notice, however, those weather fronts are starting to move in, so it's far from dry on Saturday across Northern Ireland. Outbreaks of rain here pushing into western Scotland and maybe the west coast of Wales too. Many central and eastern areas dry and bright on Saturday. Some good spells of sunshine and warming up, actually. Temperatures again in the mid, possibly even higher 20s across parts of the east on Saturday. And across East Anglia, we could top out at 30 Celsius on Sunday, and much of the southeast having a dry, fine day on Sunday. But elsewhere, we'll see the breeze picking up with further outbreaks of rain trickling in during the second half of the weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised